Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Mr. Cactuar channel. So, today we're going to be talking about counter hits in this game, Grand Blue vs. Rising. And more specifically, we're going to be talking about these counter hits. So if you're at all familiar with fighting games or done a bit of the tutorial, then you know that when you hit an opponent before their attack comes out, then you get this little notification on your side that says counter. And this does two things. One, it gives you a slight damage boost, and two, it gives a frame damage boost. And what that means is that beyond just doing more damage than usual, you also get some combos that aren't possible. So if I do Vegeta's close medium, it is plus 4 frames, which means that normally I can't combo anything from this aside from just doing the auto combo, because there are no attacks in this game that are faster than 4 frames, right? So I can do this, but I can't do something like medium into medium. But if I hit with a counter hit, it becomes 8 frames, which means that if I delay the second medium, it becomes a combo, and I can do this now. Right, so that's basically what a counter hit allows you to do. So besides the basic counter hits, this game has a special counter hit state that happens when you use the heavy button under certain conditions. And if you've played Guilty Gear Strive, then this will look familiar to you, because it's mostly the same principle. You get this big slowdown and a big flashy effect. But compared to Strive, this game has a bit more rules to getting this state. Instead of push big button, get flashy effect. And more specifically, this happens when you hit a grounded opponent with your close heavy attack and your dash heavy attack. Your far heavy attack can never create this effect, and when they're grounded, neither does your crouch heavy. But when they're jumping, the rules change a little bit. So now your crouch heavy creates a slowdown, but not any of the other ones. Not your close, not your far, not your dash. Now you might be thinking, well, this looks cool and all, but how does this slowdown help? And you Guilty Gear Strive players, just hold off on your keyboard for a second and let me explain this. But basically, we can use what's called an option select to our advantage. And an option select is this fancy fighting game term that basically means I'm going to do a bunch of inputs, right? And the game's going to pick the best result based on the buttons that I pushed. One of the most basic option selects is called the input buffer, which you might already be doing without realizing that it's a thing. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the medium attack followed by a fireball as if it were a combo. So if I'm doing the technical inputs, then I'm doing this quarter circle motion, and if I'm doing simple inputs, then I'm just pushing medium attack immediately followed by the skill button. And what's happening is that because I'm hitting thin air in the middle of this input, the medium attack isn't being followed by anything. And because it's such a quick move, I'm pretty safe by just throwing this out. But if it hits the opponent, then the attack string becomes real, because now that the medium hits something, it has something to combo into, basically. And if the opponent were to, say for example, move in and out, just like they were playing footsies, what will happen is, as I'm doing this, I'm hoping that they walk into it at some point, and then you do the thing, and that's what the buffer is all about. Now let's see what happens when we do a fireball buffer when there's a heavy counter hit. So I'm going to turn on the counter hit, push the heavy button, and immediately follow it with the fireball, and it'll look like this. So there's a big slowdown, the game kind of waits for it to end, and then it throws out the fireball. And what's basically happening is, during the slowdown, the game is remembering that I did a fireball, so that when the slowdown ends, it's going to throw it out as usual. We can take advantage of this slowdown by putting in more inputs. And what's going to happen is the game is only going to look at the most recent inputs we did and do that one if it's possible. So now I'm going to push the heavy attack, followed by a fireball, followed by an uppercut in quick succession, which will look like this. And when we get the counter hit, the game has now basically forgotten that I did the fireball and is now looking at my input, saw that I did an uppercut, and is doing the uppercut. Which is good for us because the uppercut does more damage, it gives a knockdown, and basically helps us do more things with our offense. And if I were to do the technical inputs, it'll look like this. It might take some practice, and I can't get it every time, but that's basically what it'll look like. Why this matters is because in a real match, not everything you do is going to be a counter hit, which means that if you always go for your big combo options no matter what, eventually you're gonna get blocked and eat a punish. So you need to do your safer options on occasion to prevent that from happening. And this creates the classic scenario where you have to weigh in your risk versus reward. However, what if you were only rewarded without having to take as much risk? Well, with the option select, we can make sure that on block we get the safe heavy fireball, while on hit we get the damage slash series. And to do this, we're going to do the heavy attack, followed by the heavy fireball, followed by the heavy slashes. And it'll look something like this. There's going to be an element of timing to it. And what we're going to do now is set the dummy to be counter hit random, block random, do this attack string on them, and see what happens. So as you can see, on hit and on block, regular hit that is, I get the fireball, which means that on block I'm safe, and on hit I still get damage. But on counter hit, I can do the full sword slash series and get even more damage compared to me just doing the fireball. This technique also works for anti-airs, and if we remember from earlier, you have to use your crouch heavy to get the slowdown effect. And for this example, instead of using an attack, I'm going to use the dodge as my option select. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the crouch heavy, followed by uppercut, followed by dodge, which will look like this. It will look something along those lines. I'm not a Gita main. And of course, charge characters can also take advantage of this option select. I'm going to use this anti-air example of crouch heavy, medium uppercut, and heavy flips. So it'll look something like that. So anyway, this is what I'm calling the heavy counter hit option select. I hope this has been helpful and you experiment with your character to find something cool.